Hi, and welcome back to our reading of The Red Lion by Materia. We are going to read chapters 11 and 12. And in chapter 10, we followed our protagonist, who we initially came to know as Hans Burgner, and who's now reborn as Heinz. And as a 9-year-old boy, he just re-encountered. He met again the friend of Rochard, whom he had murdered in his past life. So let's see where that takes us. La stjernene fordysse deg i søvn. Hold av en plass til meg i din drøm. Og hver dag redd mens du sover, for natten skader ingen, og jeg lover. Jeg vil våke ved din side og vokte deg i natt. Og senere, når dine øyne åpnes, og dagen skjenker av sitt lys til deg. Hver dag redd mens du våker, for dagen er din venn, og jeg lover når den er over, vil jeg våke ved din side og vokte deg igjen. Chapter 11, The Magister and His Enemy. My father made no difficulties. In fact, he was proud that his son was accepted as a pupil by the famous professor. And anyway, my constitution was so frail that I could not have learned a trade. As for my mother, she performed the miracle of the loaves and fishes given by our Lord to all mothers who have bent backs and swollen feet. To these women it is given to make bread multiply, to make clothing appear from the bottoms of drawers, and to produce pennies from nowhere. Thus, when I took my place in my new quarters, there were 2 sets of underwear in my little wooden box, and the little money was hidden between the hand-knit socks. My new room had heart-shaped holes in the window panels that were supposed to let in light. Since they let in cold air instead, I covered them with thick paper. It was a dark, unfriendly little room with sooty beams curving over my bed. Fat spiders were spinning webs that seemed to cling to my face whenever I moved. Still, it was a place of refuge, a foothold on the way to my goal. There was really an unshakable order behind the professor's absent-minded, disordered life. The only things that were real to him were his studies, notes, and contemplations. Rank, authority, success, wealth, pleasure, all the things that occupy the average man were peripheral to him. Soon I began to realize that he was plagued with an inner conflict. His sharp, dry humor and his compassion fought in him continually. He had a devastating perception of the distorted and the stupid, and his observation was promptly relayed in fiery flashes to his brain, whose creative wit formed it into some irresistible phrase. So he would launch a verbal missile and annihilate the misshapen oddling. But the success and applause he gained did not please him, nor did the malicious gloating his sharp missiles afforded the average man. He became troubled and unhappy, for he could actually understand and feel for his opponent. The moment of victory nauseated him. He knew that stupidity is really an illness that should be pitied, and that evil is only a symptom of that stupidity. He knew that there was divine essence, waiting only to be liberated within even the man who seems totally lost. The world is densely populated with such unfortunates, stumbling through their lives in a heavy stupor. "I fought shadows again just now," he told me one night when he returned home from one of his orgies. He had been at a meeting with his colleagues and had verbally vivisected a bigoted and hateful professor of theology, much to the delight of everyone else. The great man had been knocked sprawling, gasping and speechless among the carcasses of his slaughtered arguments. Not a single person had felt sorry for him, for they had all suffered under the lash of his tyrannical, sensitive ego. But Bar himself had been moved with sudden empathy, which attacked him almost like a physical pain. His colleagues' red-rimmed, darting eyes and trembling hands had reminded him of a cornered rat he had seen stoned to death during his childhood. "He was just like that, believe me, Heinz," he told me, "and it doesn't really matter that he is a stupid dunderhead and that his ideas and teachings are like obnoxious insects. He doesn't know any better. He can't do anything else. In effect, I've mocked a blind man for stumbling and further frightened a man who was already crazy with fear. I pilloried him simply for being deformed. If I didn't know that flagellation was an evil, I'd gladly scourge myself. Oh Christ, why can't I stop doing things like that?" Bar was good to me in a kindly, awkward manner. Whenever he gave me some heavy work, like carrying in the wood or copying a rare book from the university library, he would feel bad and want to compensate. "Do you get enough to eat, son?" he would ask frequently. "Be sure to tell me if you need anything. You know my head's always full of my work, but you look pale and your eyes are sunken. I'll have a stove put in your room. Go buy some honey cake from the landlord. Here's some money. He will put some meat on your bones. Or wouldn't you like to play with the other boys? I'd be glad for you to." "No, Magister, thank you for your kindness, but I want to stay here with you. The boys are wild and stupid and they bore me. Books are more interesting. They are quiet and friendly." "You talk like you were 100 instead of 10, he remarked. "Maybe I'm older than that, Magister." He looked at me with new astonishment. "Oh, of course you are, but how can you know that with your child's mind?" he burst out. "At your age, I was chasing butterflies and determined to be in armor because I envied their muscles and their deep voices. In the ordinary course of nature, the soul is only a dim mirror during the years when the body is maturing. It reflects only the shadows of the past." "In the ordinary course of nature," I repeated slowly. I looked up at him from my small chair where I had a heavy volume of manuscript on my knees. "You are right, Magister, but who is to say there are not creatures among us who have stepped out of this order, some up to the heights above, and some down to the depths? Are not some blessed with the pure light of vision, and others cursed with dark knowledge?" He stared at me seriously, and I could see a strange aversion in his face. Heinz, Heinz, I cannot understand you. I can only fear for you. You know better than I do why you came to me. Won't you tell me? Who are you, and what do you know about your real self? What can you remember? I didn't give him the answer I had intended to. Already I had said more than was really safe, but I was flooded with a painful desire for absolution. Yet I could not confess to him. He was the first person who had really cared for me since I had become an outcast, the first to put out a selfless hand and support me. Aloud I said, I remember a lot of things I'd rather forget. Images, secrets I daren't share with anyone. If I could, I'd tell you, Magister, but I just can't, even though it would relieve me. The professor leaned forward. A warm, all-understanding compassion seemed to flow from him. Unburden yourself. No matter what you did, I am not going to judge you. There is no abyss that has no way out. Oh, there is no way out of my hell, Herr Bar. His eyes narrowed, and I felt a surge of fright. You were born here in Marburg, weren't you? He asked. Yes, I replied in a low voice. Have you ever been out of the city, perhaps as far as Nuremberg? I was silent, not knowing what to say. Answer, son. No, I've never been to Nuremberg, but after all, you're a famous man, Magister. Everybody was talking about you when you first came. I jabbered confusedly. Did anyone tell you I was Amadeus Bar of Nuremberg? Yes. I spoke in a rush, then became numb with terror. Suddenly I knew what he was going to say. Amadeus Bar drowned himself in the river because he was afraid that the Holy Inquisition had issued a warrant for his arrest. The fact was established beyond doubt. His clothes and papers were on the riverbank, and his body was washed up near a neighboring village. Several people, including the Count of Zollern's doctor, made the identification, and a certain tailor's wife even swore it was the wicked old heretic's corpse. He was declared legally dead about 10 years ago. But you are Amadeus Bar nevertheless. Undoubtedly. He leaned back. No one knows that, however, but myself and the old friend who gave me my new name and papers. He has since passed on, and yet you called me by the name of the Nuremberg librarian Heinz. Let's see. Someone I knew in Nuremberg must have come here and seen me, then mentioned my name in your presence. Is that how it was? Precisely. I agreed eagerly. My father is acquainted with the owner of the Sebaldes Inn. He came through Marburg on his way to settle an inheritance matter and saw you on the street from a distance. You mean Wilhelm Drummann? That's right. He's been dead for 12 years. His eyes were two penetrating, almost tangible rays of thought that seemed to scan my very brain deep into the seat of my odious secret. I was seized with an instinctive desire to run. Getting up, I stepped back a little. Stand still, son, he said firmly. You needn't be afraid of me. I am sure you joined me for some definite purpose, for I know I cannot measure you as though you were an ordinary person. You want something from me, and I may be the only one who can give it. Why won't you be honest with me? I can't help you unless I know your problem. How did you know who I am? Who were you in Nuremberg, and where did we meet? I just stood and stared at him. I was being torn apart by the desire to confess to him and ask his forgiveness, but I remained silent. Fear, mistrust, and self-loathing shut my mouth as effectively as any prison gate. Are you burdened with some great sin? I bowed my head and suddenly gave way to convulsive sobs that shook Heinz Knotek's puny body to its depths. I no longer had the force of the elixir to hold my body together, and the emotional shock generated by my conflicting desire and fear was too much for my delicate child's nervous system. Amadeus Bar pattered around to me awkwardly, patting my shoulders and soothing me. Now, for goodness sake, stop crying. I won't ask you anything more if it upsets you so much. I wanted to stop crying, but I couldn't. I was shaking all over and there was a sharp pain in my chest. It was as though all the repentance and hopeless suffering of wicked, tragic Hans Burgner flowed out through Heinz Knotek's tears. I was helpless, racked by a fever of nervous collapse, and the Magister undressed me and put me to bed with cold packs over my heart. In the stupor of my fever, Time's hobgoblin lured me into the past. Again I was with Rochard in the rickety barn, kneeling and begging, demanding the elixir in Heinz Knotek's thin, trembling voice. Then, swimming in perspiration, I relived the murder. It was as though the demons were grinding an old-time roll through some devilish barrel organ, and I had to repeat it over and over just as it had happened. My own screams jerked me back into the present, and I saw Amadeus Bar's troubled face close to my own. He was using all his strength to pin my arms to keep me from jumping out of bed. Then the fiery waves of fever rolled me back to the rotten, damp barn and left me beside the dark mass that was Rochard's body. His open eyes stared at me in his gentle old face, and I brought down the brick between them. I had to hit and hammer with a merciless automatism of relived past action, and I felt the warm, bloody pulp smash into my face. Now the whole thing started again, and my horrified, raving spirit protested wildly. The childish throat of Heinz Knotek screamed madly in that Marburgian attic. Through the red haze of fever, I could hear the voice like something cast up from a deep canyon of the past. No, I don't want to. Please, help me stop it. It's my hand. You must stop my hand. Thou shalt not kill. Hit me. Kill me just like you would a rabid dog. Don't you understand? Please close your eyes, Rochard. Please close them. Don't look at me like that. You are Flammel, and Flammel cannot die, but me, I have to kill again and again. My God, please help me. Don't let it happen, God. I don't want to kill, oh God. I don't want the elixir, not if I have to get it this way. Thy will be done. Thy will. Help me. When the attack was over, Heinz Knotek's life force was spent, burned out by the fever of the terrible upheaval. There was barely a flicker of life in the feeble body, but rationality returned and clutched at the last frail thread of life, so that I could hear the Magister's last words. For the wise old man had kept the vigil beside my bed, and he had heard and understood the secret Hans Burgner, the murderer of Edouard and Selmus Rochard, had shouted through Heinz Knotek's mouth. Chapter 12. The Cosmic Inoculation. When I regained consciousness, I realized that the Magister knew everything. "Forgive me," I whispered, gasping. He waved me to silence. "You don't need to say anything, poor boy. I know what you mean, and there's nothing for me to forgive. What is alive cannot be destroyed. Rochard still lives, even though he is no longer reflected in time's mirror. But you are enmeshed in a horrible trap. Desiring life, you've gotten lost in the swamps of death. Now, I know why you came to me. I know the whole story, and I want to help you as much as one human being can help another. I will show you the beginning of the road, but you will have to set your own feet on it. I am going to tell you everything it is safe for you to know. He saw my grateful joy and forestalled my efforts to speak by placing his bony hand on my head. Be quiet. You must to conserve your strength. Every moment is precious. That's why I haven't sent for your parents. Do you want them? I shook my head violently. All right. Now, you understand I can only speak in illusions, and that isn't going to make things any easier for you. The elixir you acquired by murder has made you a prisoner at the lowest point in the world of emotions. It has literally poisoned you. The only remedy is transmutation, and you'll have to do it on all 3 levels at once. Transmutation will be your salvation. You'll have to work hard, studying and experimenting until you find the secret of the 3 keys that open simultaneously. Nobody else can do it for you. Listen carefully. You've got to find the Prima Materia, the matter that contains death, decay, and resurrection all within itself. You must find the great dark womb from which life is poured out. This is the lowest point in the matter of the world, and only there can your bond be dissolved. You see, you cannot succeed by using only the 2 higher planes, the astral and the mental. If you did, the matter would still be bound. The material plane is not present in the other 2, but they are both present in it. I know you can't understand all this as yet. I'm just inoculating you with it. Search for the meaning. Your whole existence and your every experience are guarantees that there is a meaning. There is simultaneity only in the nightmarish world of matter. People pray in one room, curse in another, kill in one, and beget in yet another. 2 will be harvesting in the evangelistic meadow, and 1 will be taken and the other left. It's only in that meadow, on the material plane, that the 2 can stand side by side, subject to the laws of material existence. There's the potential for everything on this earth, damnation as well as resurrection. Man is the spiritual equinox of the cosmos. The boundaries of everything meet in him. That's why the transmutation has to occur simultaneously on all 3 levels. Barr continued. The process is a motion directly opposite to the drive for physical existence. This makes it a motion tending away from desire, begetting, and birth. Birth is merely a motion toward matter. Death is its antipode. Sages and philosophers all knock on the door of death because they can sense that the solution of every mystery, freedom and resurrection, are all found behind it. By the laws of alchemy, something has to die and decay before it can rise. To sum up, transmutation on the physical plane is a converse motion to begetting and birth. It is analogous but in reverse order. It too needs male and female principles. The process is called the chemical wedding. During this chemical wedding, which takes place in the ancient womb of the Prima Materia, the irresistible word is spoken. The summons is sent out to call together all the physical and astral forces of the Magus, all the created material and emotional forces, even those that have wandered in separate directions like Golem, and those that are latent and summoned. The Prima Materia may be defined as that bottle into which the Magus, if the transmutation has been successful, deposits the whole power of his spirit, his creative complex that has previously moved without direction. Now the spirit serves him and fulfills all his wishes. He becomes vested with his full forces and controls them. There is no limit to his power. But the prerequisite for a successful experiment is the elimination of the desire for power. Only he who will really use it wisely, who can see in it the key to the 3 gates of liberation, can produce the philosopher's stone. Then the waves of the great ocean broke over me and tore me from Heinz Knotek's puny body. The attic and the haggard face of the blessed old man who bent over the bed stayed in the 3-dimensional world. I myself was again tossing about in the dirty, green-black astral densities, again trailing my terrible entourage. But this time, I knew that the train of apocalyptic monsters was really myself. They were part of me, my own creations, and would control me until I could control them. We were all tossing helplessly in the raging hurricane of emotion, all chained together. If people could only understand and see the true origin and essence of these bizarre, depraved forms, they would never give in to one single lustful or evil thought. They would stamp out their impulses as they stamp out cobras' eggs. But the state between life and death was different this time. I was impregnated with an idea. I clung desperately to the little seed of idea about transmutation, all through the stupefying cacophony of the violent, sucking vortices. I clung to it as though it were a buoy and surfaced again and again from the dirty foam. A few of the whirling lust vortices pulled me toward them and carried me toward the dark, narrow gate. But the idea on which I concentrated with all my strength proved to be a barrier that would not let me through that gate because of the magic idea of transmutation. I was special. It was not easy to go through any vortex with this strange soul pregnancy of mine. If I found a mother womb whose sensitive vibrations made contact, she could never carry me full term. Either she miscarried or produced so little life force I couldn't live longer than a few months. I went through many ordeals of conception, development, birth, exhaustion, and death before I finally succeeded in getting on firm ground. This was in Milan on December 25th, 1616. And more on that next time.